Hey guys, Post Malone's long-awaited country album F-1 Trillion is finally out. Country has a long history of pop artists coming over and dropping boring cash grab albums whenever their mainstream career is floundering. So to be honest, I went into this album fully expecting to hate it. But say what you will, there's a reason so many massive artists want to be a part of this project. It just works. I rarely talk about producers or even writers, but Louis Bell and Charlie Handsome produce every song on this album. And the two of them, along with Post Malone himself, also have writing credit on every single song, which you can really hear in the album. There's 34 artists credited in the long bed extended version, but the fact that there's so much consistency makes it really feel like a cohesive album from start to finish.
I'm just looking for the right one, but them wrong ones keep...
For all the hype I just gave for the album, the opener Wrong Ones is a pretty weak way to start. It's a fairly flat lyric, looking for a good girl to settle down with, but falling for a short-sighted good time. It features Tim McGraw, but his verse is just a reference to a bunch of his other songs, which if anything just makes the song worse. As I've listened through, I've been starting at track 2 because Wrong Ones is a rare, complete miss for me.
I got a thing for the finer things. I'm in a dim blind with the diamond ring.
While not exactly a tearjerker, Finer Things is a breath of fresh air after Wrong Ones. It's sort of a country spin on rappers bragging about their money and wealth. He talks about his camo green Lambo as he sits in a deer blind sporting a diamond ring. This is also where the album title comes from, where his truck isn't just an F-150, it's an F-1 Trillion. It features Hank Williams Jr., and I like his verse a lot. It stays in theme, but also feels specific to him, including a reference to his father's music. It might have been a little too on the nose, but I really wish this had been the title track of the album. The song itself is pretty good, about how both parties in the relationship share blame when it falls apart, and the idea that they both blame each other more than themselves is super relatable. But I just love the meta-narrative the song tells, especially as the first single released ahead of the album. Post kickstarted his country career with a tribute to Joe Diffie beside Hardy and Morgan Wallen, and up to this album, he's had massive country superstars in his corner every step of the way. Now the standard edition of the album has 15 collaborations with nearly every country superstar you can think of. And as much as I like to imagine the album would be just as good without them, their involvement has been incredibly helpful at giving Post an in to the country scene.
Somebody pour me a drink, somebody pour me a smoke, I'm about to get on a bus.
Unsurprisingly, Pour Me a Drink was my least favorite of the lead-up singles to the album. It's a very fun song, but it has absolutely nothing to say lyrically. It spends 3 minutes and 16 seconds finding as many ways to say I want a drink as possible. To be honest, it's a bit of a shame because Post and Blake sound great together, and they both have strong songwriting potential. But Pour Me a Drink just gets stuck in my head because of how mindless it is. Which I guess isn't entirely a bad thing, but Austin is one of my favorite songs of all time, so I'm just disappointed in the lack of substance.
Baby, I don't have the heart to break yours.
Maybe I'll catch some hate for this, but I really don't like Dolly in this song. It's an okay lyric about not wanting to leave someone for fear of hurting them, but Dolly's voice is just too unique and distinctive to blend well with Post. So even though they're singing together, it just sounds like two different songs played over each other. And there's also something unsettling to me about 78-year-old Dolly Parton calling her own verse sexy in the song. Obviously, if you get a chance to have Dolly on your album, you take it, but if Lainey Wilson would have switched and taken this song, at least the bell-bottom line would have made sense. All of that to say, the song isn't terrible. It just feels like they knew all they needed was Dolly's name on it and it would be a hit, which is true of course, but I think it could have been better.
'Cause I gave half to them halfway lovers. I left some to them two drunk summers.
Easily my favorite from the standard album, What Don't Belong to Me is a masterpiece in my eyes. The idea is, as he's falling into this relationship, he wants to give everything he has to it, but he recognizes that his heart is so scattered and broken from giving it away in the past that it's no longer his to give away. It's a surprisingly somber song on such a mainstream album, and a profound analogy for heartbreak extending into a future relationship. But what this song really means to me is that Post Malone doesn't need collaborators to make great country music. This was his first solo on the album, and I was definitely skeptical, but he blew me away. I have more to say on the song in my most recent weekly review, so that's all I'll say here.
And it goes without saying, she ain't coming back.
The wordplay of Goes Without Saying is a little predictable, but I think it's done pretty well. It hinges on all the obvious reasons she left, that go without saying, and then the fact that she left without saying goodbye. It's nothing crazy, but it works for me. Brad's verse fits in really well, and I love his delivery on it. He's usually known more for his guitar skills and lyricism, but his voice plays really well with Post, and it just overall sounds great. I love Brad Paisley, so I'm happy to see him doing a big collaboration like this, and even happier that it came out so good.
Someone to put the tires back in the drive.
Guy for That is a deceptively deep and heartbroken song disguised as a fun radio hit. Easily my favorite lyric of the lead singles, it opens like a song about their friends, and the small town stereotype of knowing a handyman for every situation. But it turns out the one thing he really needs is someone to fix his broken heart, but he doesn't have a guy for that. The dichotomy between the fun, upbeat musicality and the heartbroken desperation of the lyrics gives it a sort of denial theme, and that three-tiered layering of the themes is really cool, especially in the song they released as a single. Obviously Luke sounds great on it, he could sing a phone book and I'd listen, but I really like his verse and he and Post sound great together.
Sometimes you're driving, sometimes you're stalling, sometimes you're flying, sometimes you're falling.
I said the whole album is sonically consistent, which it definitely is, but after Guy for That, Nosedive is a complete tonal shift, literally slowing down to embrace the silver linings in life and all the good that can be found in the hard times. It's a beautiful song, a powerful message, and a great performance by both Lainey and Post.
Kick it with the losers.
This song is basically Chris Pratt's loser speech in Guardians of the Galaxy.
I look around at us, you know what I see? Losers. I mean, like folks who have lost stuff. And we have, man, we have, all of us.
It's about finding camaraderie in the pain and realizing that even at your lowest, you're never alone. Because often it feels like life takes more than it gives, but the bonds you form by going through tough times together are the strongest. This is a really fitting collaboration for Jelly Roll. He sounds great, and it's very in theme with the mental health focused lyrics in his own songs, and it applies universally because everyone has tough days where you just need to not feel alone.
So I hung my horns on the wall soon as she walked in.
Devil I've Been is about giving up their wild and crazy years to settle down with a woman. It's a good song that I would say is decent in just about every aspect. It's both lyrically and sonically good, but not great. I've never gotten fully on board with ERNEST's voice, and again, I think it's okay, it's just forgettable. ERNEST has writing credit on most of the album as well, so it makes sense that he was included, and he is a great songwriter, but I tend to think his writing outshines his voice most of the time.
It's a long lost highway.
Never Love You Again is another decent song, but my biggest confusion is the Sierra Ferrell feature. I'd never heard of her before the song, and her stuff is good, but every other featured artist is a household name in their own right, with a fan base spanning genres and generations. And even more so, Sierra's participation is almost entirely singing together with Post, more like a background vocal than an actual artist feature. And they work pretty well together, so I'm not really complaining, it's just a weird marketing decision for this album in particular. The song itself is just Post telling a girl that their relationship will only be a one-night stand. He admits he's lonely and needs the company, but it won't be more than that in the morning. It's slow and pretty and a worthwhile inclusion on the album, but as I'm analyzing the song, the weird marketing decisions are surprisingly distracting.
I knew for a night, girl, I'd be drinking about you.
The second Luke Combs feature in the album, Missing You Like This, is a longing look back at a breakup that still haunts him. Where Guy for That was a deep, heartbroken song disguised as a party jam, Missing You Like This is much more openly sad and sorrowful. Post is looking back on the relationship that he let slip away and realizing he would have tried harder if he knew how bad it would hurt. And even years later, in a new relationship, her memory makes it impossible to move on. Like the last few songs, these slower, more earnest moments hit even harder in contrast to the upbeat start of the album without feeling out of place. It's cool to hear Luke and Post on two songs that feel very different, letting them show off their range both as individuals and as a duo.
She drank up all my whiskey, blew down all my smoke.
From a structural standpoint, California Sober is incredibly interesting. It has no real chorus, and the only refrains are just super stretched out I rhymes. With just the verses, it's basically a straight warning about a woman who suckered them for a ride and then ran off with their money. Maybe it's just Chris Stapleton is so good, but even though the structure feels odd, the song still works for me. It's not my favorite song on the record, but if nothing else, it's incredibly intriguing.
Would you hide my gun? Would you tell no one? Would you pack and never coming back again, babe?
If you know my music tastes, you won't be surprised to hear the Hardy feature is one of my favorites from the album. I consider it sort of a sister song to Wait in the Truck by Hardy and Lainey Wilson, talking about killing for love, albeit in a much more hypothetical sense. He says straight up that he would happily throw his life away for this woman if she wanted him to. But he wants to know if she would do the same. If he did, would she give up an honest life to become an accomplice with him? Like Wait in the Truck, it's a bit strange to hear them talk about death so casually in a love song, but that feeling is very intentional and drives home the almost manic love he has for her. It's a very fitting song for Hardy to feature on, given Wait in the Truck and his new album with songs like Psycho. And I'm a sucker for this type of songwriting that's so outlandish and extreme that it almost becomes more relatable.
I wrote songs about sin and evil women, pills and cars.
Right About You is a songwriter's love song, looking back at his past through the lens of the songs he's written, and being thankful that, for all the wrongs he wrote about, he was right about her. Like with What Don't Belong to Me, it's a solo performance, and I think it works well. There are a lot of songwriting puns, and overall, I continue to be impressed by Post solos. The only line that doesn't work for me is the wordplay of the title, where he tries to make it both right about you and writing about you.
Thank God I was writing about you.
The idea is there, and he delivers it right in between the two, so it's hard to tell which one he's saying, but it still kind of pulls me out of the otherwise great song every time I hear it.
Guess it's MEXICO for me.
Unsurprisingly from the Billy Strings feature, MEXICO is a fast-paced guitar masterclass. The song is about fleeing a dangerous relationship, but getting caught up in one after another all the way there. Eventually he does make it to Mexico, but he ends up in jail as the fall man for another woman's crime. The same story could maybe be written as a tragedy, but the upbeat swingy nature just makes it fun and even comedic. It's not exactly the deepest movie to tears type song, but it's definitely an earworm and a great one to clap along to.
And she might be wearing white, but her first dress, it was pink.
Based on his personal stage in life, in most of his songs, Post is either reflecting on his wilder years or thankful that he found someone to settle down with. But Yours is a look forward, imagining the day his daughter will get married and he'll have to give her away. A lot of times, both in country music and in real life, father figures struggle to express their love for their children verbally and directly, instead showing their love through subtler acts that often go unnoticed. Similar to Cleaning This Gun, Yours shows Post's love and care for his daughter in the form of his protectiveness. But what really drives home his theme is how indirectly Post is talking about his own emotions, by first reaching years into the future to talk to his daughter's groom, but then referring back to the past, his present, to discuss how much he loves her. It's such a beautiful song, and I'm sure it'll become a staple of father-daughter dances at weddings. But it's also so much more than that, and a great way to close out the album. Thank you so much for watching. I enjoyed the album way more than I expected, and I hope you do too. I'll have another video out soon about the 9 extra songs from the long bed version, because there are some real gems in there too. In the meantime, I really appreciate it if you liked and subscribed, and leave a comment with your thoughts. I know that's just a cheesy YouTube thing to say, but it is really helpful with the algorithm. Have a great day, and I'll see you in the next one.